Hi, everybody. Father Bill Holtzinger here, and this is your Friday Reflection. Well, I'm in the office, and Snickers is down here sleeping or resting. He's an expert at that. And I just wanted to start my conversation with you today with a thought from a coach from the Clemson Tigers, Dabo Swinney. He is the winningest coach in the history of their college football program, and he is a force to be reckoned with. He said this past week, and I think there's a lot of controversy around it, but I want to grab some of this and then kind of reflect back as Christians how we might relate to it. So this is what the reports are saying, and then he said this on the radio show, the coach's radio show. He said, "We're at a point in our time, and I hate that," Sweeney said, "where people, if you don't go undefeated, say you're losers, you're terrible, and it's just a terrible mindset." So he's reflecting back because now Clemson is 4-2, and to have lost 2 games now, they were, I think, ranked number 9 in the nation when the start of the season began, and now they're not even ranked on the top 25 as far as I know. But they still are a great team and a force to be reckoned with. So he goes on, and honestly, he says, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon can get a little too full. This is the fan base is what he's talking about. And being full, meaning getting, it's all or nothing. It has to be win. And if you're not winning, then you're out, right? So this is what I want to kind of focus on. And as Christians, this reminds me of what's called the Paschal Mystery. And he may not be thinking about this, but there's some wisdom in falling or even failing or losing. There's some amazing and mysterious, actually, gift in this, right? If we're winning all the time, we lose the appreciation of our ability to win. And he actually mentions that in his interview. But as people, if we think we're perfect, we're deluding ourselves, right? We know that we are sinners. And with Jesus at our side, he can help and restore us. And with Jesus at our side, he can remind us that he loves us through our, sins. And he wants to forgive us. Now, another thing to mention is this thing called Paschal Mystery. This is a technical term, and it really means the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's like the secret of Christianity, and it shouldn't be, but we all want to have heaven, but we don't want it at any cost. We just want to have the joy and none of the suffering and none of the pain. But Jesus gave us an example. And that example is in this life to suffer, that we will suffer. And we know that he then has suffered before us, which gives us confidence that even through the suffering, there can be resurrection. But it doesn't just go from suffering to resurrection. What was in between that for Jesus? It was his death, right? Suffering, death, and resurrection. That through our suffering, we are called to die in some way so that we may rise again. And obviously, the ultimate is what I call the ultimate push, when we literally suffer physically such that we die in this world and are buried, but are given eternal life in heaven. So suffering, death, and resurrection. But there's a lot of moments in life that we can prepare for this. And sports is one of those that winning is great. It reminds us of the great things that are, to be had in the kingdom of heaven. But if you've never lost, then we could take advantage in our minds of just assuming it, right? That when we have to struggle for something, we know that there's a value for it. In this case, theologically speaking, we know that when we suffer, this is a reminder that this world is not all there is, and we're not really meant for this world. This is, to put our eggs in all the basket of this world is going to be a big bankrupt strategy because everybody's going to suffer. Everybody's going to have heartache. Everybody's going to need to die to something. And so when someone is a good sports figure or a very good sportsman or sportswoman, they know how not just to win well and be good winners, but also to be good losers. What does that look like? Sports figures at the end of a game, they will praise God when they've won. They sometimes will even start their interviews that way, which I'm thoroughly impressed. But do they do that when they lose? Well, that we are called to do that when we have lost, or when, like, say, in a game. I am most interested when I watch a football game because I'm a big football fan. When someone puts a good hit on a defensive lineman, puts a good hit on somebody like the running back, but then also helps pick the running back up off the ground. Or somebody that's defending a receiver, and the receiver makes this amazing catch, just totally, beating the defense person. Um, and the defender, while tackling him, still picks up the guy that caught the ball, the wide receiver, and says, "Hey, good job." That's a good loser, right? Because in that play, he didn't defend perfectly, and the receiver caught the ball, right? So we need to be good at both of these things. In other words, there is no heaven without the Paschal Mystery. There's no heaven without suffering and dying first. The only way to get to heaven is through death, suffering death. But in this life, we are to, you could say, be good sports in all of this. This is the analogy of sports, that when we lose, we truly suffer because nobody wants to lose. I don't. But when I do lose, I'm to be reminded this is not all there is. I've asked teens before, so what does it mean to play sports when the goal is to win? They say, well, okay, yeah, well, what's greater than winning? Is there something greater than winning? Some don't know the answer. See, winning is a foreshadowing of heaven as well. Because Jesus has conquered death. He has won for us salvation. But we have little battles here, and we have to push through death in order to go to heaven. But as faithful people, I know for myself, I need to weather the deaths in my life. An example, a couple of weeks ago, we had the blessing of animals. And I've heard this many times where people had a dog or a cat and it passed away, and it was just too difficult to ever get another pet. They just couldn't stand the pain. And I understand that. Snickers is my fourth dog. But for me, and I've had to put down at least two of those dogs. The last one, Ezra, he died on my bed one morning. But I will assume at some point, Snickers, I'm going to outlive Snickers, and he will have to be put down as well. And it just kills us, doesn't it? It's just so hard because there's innocent, etc. But I need to do this, and I need to not shy away from it, because the more I shy away from these deaths, the less I'm prepared for my own death. I think about my death frequently. That's not crazy, but I'm preparing that someday God's going to call me home. And what do I believe? Do I believe that this is all there is? In which case, that's kind of horrific, because there's nothing then after this. Is that true? I don't believe so. But I have to face that fear head on. So I think about my death. I even think about how it might happen in that final moment, going from consciousness to what we see as unconsciousness. What will be on the other side? My sister Judith, she had a great story that she shared with my brother Gregory, who's since passed on. Gregory had mental difficulties. He was developmentally and in his mind delayed. He was like maybe about a fifth grader, or actually maybe a 5-year-old even. Let's go even younger, though he was 42 when he passed away. And he was afraid when he had seizures. He had frequent seizures. She said some amazing thing to him. He said, you have a friend. He had a friend who passed away from a seizure. And he's afraid what would happen to him. She said, you know what? When you have a seizure, when you're done, are aware of your surroundings, right? He goes, yeah. Well, what happens if you had a seizure and you woke up and Jesus was on the other side? Heaven was on the other side. He's like, whoa, I mean, that's what could happen? Yes. That's our hope, that do not be afraid if you have a seizure. And that's the last thing in your life, because what's on the other side for you, Gregory, would be heaven. I desire greatly to go to heaven, but I need to prepare, because there's going to be a time I want to be able to leave this earth in faith. But that means I need to confront my own demons, and I need to confront my own fears. because it's natural to fear death. So, what is your fear in this regard? I want to encourage you through things like sports, through the death of a pet, to walk headlong into these things. And that's what I do. I've even took one of my dogs, knowing I had to put him down, and I walked him. I gave him his best breakfast ever, and I carried him through the house and cried and said goodbye. And then I went to the vet and prayed over the dog, and then they gave him a shot, and he went to sleep, and that was it. It was horrible. It was hard, but it needed to happen. And I needed to do it personally. I needed to see that and be there through the whole thing. Why? So that I will be, with God's grace, brave and open to when God then receives my life after I pass. So it's that leaving earth part, right? That is hard. Leaving this existence that we so much love, which is so great. We're going to move into November. We're going to be thinking about people who have passed before us. Let us do it with faith and hope, not fear. But we need to practice this. We need to practice, it's not just a mind trip, but we need to practice walking headlong into the difficulties of our lives, dying to ourselves, dying to our egos, maybe sometimes having difficult discussions that we probably would rather not have, and doing the things that are difficult, so that we know that we can walk through those and we survive them. We actually might even be better for them, right? That's what happens to God's friends, his faithful Christians, and those who he knows who love him, that he, in his divine providence, takes them to himself in heaven. So have no fear. Walk straight towards your difficulties. This is the Paschal Mystery. That means suffering. To avoid suffering is to avoid resurrection. Go headlong into those difficulties with faith, knowing God is beside you, and allow yourself to die to whatever it is that you struggle with. Coach Swinney has some wisdom here. Winning all the time might make us a bit arrogant, like we're untouchable or very touchable in this world. Sometimes losing is a good medicine for the soul. Folks, I'll see you this weekend. I'm preaching. Pray for me as I offer a homily for everybody. And then, of course, myself and Father Anthony will be mixing up who's doing the presiding. And Deacon Brett is supposed to be back this weekend, too. So we'll all see you then. God bless you. Bye-bye.